come on. Let's see. Pull this out. I like that. This right here. For a Zoom recording, and I'm recording. There. Let's see. Where can I put this thing? This right there's the best spot. Okay. All right. I think that's it. Ta-da. That's it. I think. That's it. Let me put you guys right there. Okay, I see you. Make that small. Let a couple people in. Oh, wait, just in time, I think. Is it time? It is time. It's 10 o'clock. It's more people coming in. We have, what, 10 people? That's not bad for a lab. That's about half the class. About 10. Oh, here comes somebody else. And we get some stragglers coming in. So, hey, good morning, everybody. It is 10 o'clock. It's Wednesday, February 24th, 2021. And you guys are Biology 1161, Section 90, my Wednesday morning human anatomy lab. And today we start human osteology. Remember last week we did the integumentary system and the skeletal muscles. And then today we start the bones. And we got this week and next week, and that's it. And then your practical, and man, just the semester is just moving. All right. And so, again, your practical is like 2 weeks from today at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Wednesday from 10 to 10:30. Right. Just like the other one is only open for 30 minutes, etc. You got to Zoom and you got to take it on my courses and all the whole thing, everybody. And I'm still, believe it or not, and people asking me questions about this. That's why it's important to pay attention the first day of class. I explain everything, you know. So yeah, that's all true. And yeah, if you don't Zoom during the practical, no Zoom, no credit. You know, I can't give you credit for the exam if you don't Zoom. Okay. So, but I can't pass the course if I don't get credit. Well, right. So if you want to pass the course, you need to Zoom. All right. Now, without further ado, let's talk about this. This is the normally what I would do in a normal semester. I have like a checklist, and this was on. I showed you this on my courses last week. there's a list. You can print it out if you want to, but you really don't need it. It's like superfluous now that you have a PowerPoint. But what I'm going to go through is the PowerPoint that's it's on my courses. And I built the PowerPoint, as you can see right here. It says online version. I made it last semester, last fall. A year ago, we kind of stopped the semester midway, but it was after the bones for the COVID stuff. But last semester I was, completely online. So this is my online version. But before all this, what I would do is go through the checklist and present the bones one at a time to my students in class and point out stuff. And that's basically what I'm going to do with the PowerPoint here. And it works out pretty good. I think I've put together a pretty decent PowerPoint for you guys, and you'll learn the bones, okay? So let's talk about that. So first few slides, what we're going to do today is just the skull, and then next week, all the other bones. And we do just the skull in one lab because the skull, if you're in my lecture, you know this, it itself is a skeleton. It's the cranial skeleton. It's comprised of 22 separate bones, all articulating, most of them forming sutures, and all that. And so we're going to look at them one at a time. So you have to take the skull apart. And so you're going to learn the skull disarticulated. Now, it's useful to, be familiar with the articulated cranial skeleton like here. And we'll have a couple of different views, and we'll be referring to these when we're going through the bones to give you an idea like, where is this bone situated on the skull again, et cetera. But there's a couple of, I have it in all the possible views: the anterior view of the skull, of course, lateral view, looking at the right side of the head, and of course you can see. Now, this is just for reference, okay? This view right here, this is the internal view. This is the Calvarian cut, they call it, where the calva is removed, the skull cap is removed. So you're looking at the cranial cavity here, and then this is like you take it and flip it over. This is the inferior view, and so you can see of the skull. And so again, for reference. Now I know you see all these little numbers pointing out everything. Just ignore that for now. I'm not going to hold you responsible for all this little stuff unless I tell you something different. Okay, you'll see what you need to know. I'm going to point out everything you need to know. Okay, so let's talk about the bones. Oh, and then the posterior view, the superior view. This is looking down on the skull. This is anterior here. Is posterior. That's the left side of the head. That's the right side of the head. This is a posterior view looking at the back of the head. This is, of course, the occipital region, etc. Now, for the bones, and this is like the number one bone, first bone of the skull, the frontal bone. In this view, you're looking at the frontal bone up through inferior view. You're looking, it's the inferior aspect. You're looking up at the top of the eye sockets here. And what do you need to know? Well, first of all, you have to be able to recognize this as a frontal bone, okay? And of this bone, these are the things I want you to identify, okay? And there's all kinds of things pointed out, but I'm only going to hold you responsible for these four things I have listed here. The superior, the supraorbital foramen / notch, number 7. You see that right there? Sometimes it's a hole, it's be a foramen. Sometimes it's a notch, like right here, and that would be a supraorbital foramen. If it's a hole, it'd be a foramen. If it's a notch, it would be a notch. Okay, but supraorbital, it's like the top of the eye sockets. Okay, you have I got a skull in here. I can kind of point out too. That might be useful. Let me grab my skull for a second. Actually, this was given to me by a former student. Isn't that nice? She bought this like on Amazon for, I don't know, $40 or something like this. Pretty cool, isn't it? And she was done studying. She says, "Here, you want this? I don't want this damn thing anymore." I said, "Sure, I can use it to teach with, whatever." So up here, looking at it like this, okay? So I gotta name this guy. Something, anyway. I'm gonna put him right here in case I need him. I don't know if you can see it or whatever. But there's that. The orbital plate, number 9, that's this big flat surface right here. That's the top of the eye sockets, orbital plates, number 9. Then the ethmoid notch, number 11. This is this notch right here. That's what you would see. You open up the skull like this and you look right here. So you're looking up like this, but this is the in the skull. You see the ethmoid bone in there, okay? But that's what this is, to accommodate the ethmoid bone. And if you back up, you can see this on your skull, on your PowerPoint here, right here. See, here's the top part of the orbital plates, and then this is the ethmoid bone occupying that notch right there. See that? That's why I have that there. Okay. And then the zygomatic process, number 18. Now, the word process, that's another one of those bone terms. And usually processes of bones are named after bones they articulate with. And so, let me put him right there. The zygomatic bone is a bone, and this is where the zygomatic bone, the cheekbone, articulates with the frontal bone. So this point sticking down here and here, those are the zygomatic processes of the frontal bone. Okay. All right. Bone number 2, this is your parietal bone. Maybe you have left and right parietal bones on the sides of the skull, like right here. This is all parietal bone. And I guess that's the only place you can see it. And then here's a parietal bone, here's a parietal bone, there's a parietal bone, there's a parietal bone. And then here it is. Here it is by itself, disarticulated. Now, you're looking at that and you're going, it just looks like a big square, whatever. Well, each side articulates with another bone, and that forms another joint. And so we identify those joints, which are called sutures. Number 8, right here, that's a sagittal suture. The sagittal suture, see this? Can you see that? Or I can just do this right here. The sagittal suture is where each of the parietal bones articulate with each other, okay? So that's this surface right here. So it's on the top, makes sense. So this is superior, this is inferior, this is anterior, this is posterior, okay? See right here, external aspect, right parietal. So this is the right side of the head. So this is the front, this is the right side of the head. You know, his nose and face would be over here, and the back of his head would be over here, right? So right here is where it's going to articulate with the frontal bone, and that forms the coronal suture, right? Coronal suture. So here's your frontal bone, and right there across the top, coronal suture. All right. And then number 10, in the back, right here, it's kind of shaped, kind of weird. See how this one's straight and this one kind of angles in a little bit? That's how you can identify these two from each other. You know, how do you know this is the right one, not the left one? Well, the lambdoidal suture kind of bends in a little bit. I know when I do this, it's opposite of what you're seeing. So what you're seeing, it looks more like this, I think. So it goes out kind of like that, opposed to more perpendicular. Yeah, that's characteristic of the lambdoidal suture, because lambdoidal, remember lambdoidal, it means it's shaped like a lambda. See that? Looks like that. Or like this. See that? This lambdoidal suture right here. And there it is kind of going. Now here, you see these things? Remember in my lecture, I talked about wormian bones? There's some wormian bones in there. But this is the lambdoidal. So it kind of looks like a upside down V. So there you go. Lambdoidal suture. And then squamous suture, that's the one on the bottom. This smooth right here at the bottom. That's how you can tell the top from the bottom. The top is kind of jagged. It forms a little joint right there. Well, this is smooth. This is where the parietal bone articulates with the squamous portion of the temporal bone. Okay. Again, look right here. Here's the temporal bone in this kind of big fan-looking flat part. Right there, that joint right here. That's the squamous suture. So squamous, coronal, sagittal, and lambdoidal in the back. How about that? Speaking of temporal bone, here's your temporal. This is actually the left temporal bone. So the anterior is over this way. So you're looking at it like this. Right there. That's the temporal bone. All kinds of things pointed out, but I'm only holding you responsible for these 5. The squamous portion, number 18, it's all this big flat part right here. That's the squamous portion. The zygomatic process. You know, I thought we had a zygomatic process. Yes, you do. There are 3 zygomatic processes. There's one associated with the temporal bone. There's one associated with the frontal bone, and you're going to see that there's going to be another one associated with the maxilla. But anyway, this pointy thing sticking out right here is the zygomatic process of the temporal bone. And so you can see it sticking out right here. All right. The mandibular fossa, there's number 26, kind of pointing right, kind of hard to see what that is. What that is, and that's where the mandible articulates. That's a joint. See, here's the mandible or the dentary bone. And where it attaches right there, there's a little scooped out depression. Remember, a fossa is like a ditch, a depression. And so this little, you kind of see, it kind of looks like a little dent right there. That's the mandibular fossa for the mandible. Okay. And then 29, this hole right here, that's the external auditory meatus. Okay. That's, you can hardly see it on this skull because this is not real. This is a model. If this is real, there'd be a hole there, and that's your ear hole. In a living head, this opening is covered with your eardrum. So this is behind your eardrum. You're looking actually into the middle ear. Okay, that's the external auditory meatus. And then the last thing, the mastoid process, number 34. That's this kind of bony thing hanging down right here on this model right here, right there. And that's that knot you feel behind your ear, that bony knot behind your ear. That's what that is. That's for the articulation of your throat muscle right here, which is called the sternocleidomastoides. How about that? Next is your sphenoid bone. I like the sphenoid. Doesn't it look like a bat? Kind of look like a bat flying at you. Let's see the bat ears, bat wings, bat legs coming at you, like flying at you. Yeah, this is a fun one. In lecture, I call this the keystone of the cranial bones because it articulates with all of the cranial bones. It makes a joint with all the other cranial bones. There's 8 cranial bones, 14 facial bones. And so it's making an articulation all those other ones. But there really should be, you know, I was thinking about this the other day. There should be 9 cranial bones and 13 facial bones. So I would move one of the facial bones into the cranial bone category. Which bone do you think it would be one that would move? If you've gotten to know me any, you think about which one that might be. Think about it and send me a message at some point saying, which bone would he move from facial to cranial? And it makes sense. And then do we get extra credit for this? No. Not yet anyway. But, you know, think about, you know, if there was one bone you can move from the 14 facial bones and move it to be included as one of the cranial bones, which one would it be and why? That'd be a good paper to write. You know, so we should write papers for extra credit in your class. I haven't thought about this. Maybe it'll be a thing. I don't know. Think about it. I don't know. Just for funsies right now. Anyway, here's your sphenoid bone. You only have one, the little bat-looking thing. Now, what you're looking at here, this is, it says posterior aspect. So it's kind of hard to demonstrate this because it would be looking at it from behind, but it's in here like this, okay? And so hands-on 3D would be so much better, you know, but anyway, we can't do that. So right here, you're kind of looking at it from the behind. Okay, parts of it. Looks like a bat, right? You got these things here, the ears and the big wings. Well, those are the greater wings and lesser wings. The greater wings, number one, that's these big ones here and here on both sides. Those are greater wings. Lesser wings are the little ones, like his little ears right here. They kind of look like ears to me, little bat ears. It's greater wings, lesser wings. The foramen rotundum, which remember a foramen, singular, plural will be foramina. Foramina are for the passage of something, usually a nerve or a blood vessel. In this case right here, it's for the passage of a branch of the trigeminal nerve. It's going right here from the brain, and it's headed towards the eye socket. So number 4 right there, foramen rotundum, which means round. Rotundum means round hole. Okay, so the round hole here and here, the foramen rotundum. Sella turcica, you're going to learn some Latin. Of course, studying up anatomy, and it's what it is. It's all Greek or Latin, you know. Sella turcica literally means, sella means saddle, turcica means Turkish. The Turkish saddle, it's hard to appreciate this, but like right here in the center, or if you look right here, down between my fingers, it kind of looks like a little saddle. Imagine a little Turkish person sitting right there. That's the Turkish saddle. So what's that for? That's for the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland is nestled in that little saddle right there. Okay. Number 8. Where's number 8? Okay. Well, it's kind of hard to see what it's pointing to, but that's what it is. Number 9, the optic foramen. Of course, you have 2 of them, one for each optic nerve. And where's the number? Oh, here it is. See, there's a hole there and a hole there. They're like at the base of the ears, or you know, the lesser wings. You get the optic foramina, and of course, like I said, this is a model. So looking at a real skull is better sometimes because it have all the openings. Because in making a model, it's hard to reproduce certain passageways and holes and stuff. This one doesn't have all the holes, so it's a. That's why it was only like $40. Like a real human skull. You can buy real human heads. Well, you probably can't. Well, I don't know. If you go under a bridge somewhere, you might be able to meet up with so-and-so and don't ask any questions. You can sell you something for real cheap. But anyway, ICANN is a secondary educator buy human heads, you know, for research purposes and so forth. But it's like you can't go down to Walmart and buy, you know, human body parts. But I can. There's a place that you can buy, and I haven't bought a human skull in a long time. It's been several years. I don't know, 5, 10, 15 years since I bought one. But they were about $600 a piece some years ago. They're probably $1,000 a piece now. You know, that's why a lot of schools and people go with the models. The models are much cheaper, but you get varying degrees of accuracy with models. Okay, you know, teaching quality with all the bells and whistles be, you know, much more expensive than something that you would use like maybe in an art class, or something that you would use for Halloween. You know, which one do you think costs more, this one or this one? This one picked up at Dollar General. This one, Amazon. That's the difference. I kind of like this one better though. So anyway, sphenoid bone. If you want to look at this on the skull, here's the sella turcica, the Turkish saddle right there. And it's kind of hard to tell, but this would be like the lesser wing, the greater wing would be over here. Let me see. And then right here, this is the lateral view of the greater wing. Okay, etc. Let's go back to this one. Okay. I showed you the optic frame. Where am I? Optic framing. I showed you that one, number 9. Yeah. Lateral pterygoid plate, medial pterygoid plate. Pterygoid. That's named after some muscles that attach here. So I guess the little bat legs. Why does he have 4 legs? I don't know. But this is the medial pterygoid plates because they're on the inside, and these ones on the outside of the lateral pterygoid plates. 16, 16, and 18. 18 and 16. That's it. And then finally, the superior orbital fissure. That's that. See the big split right there? And that big split, the big opening? That's the superior orbital fissure. 23. Where's 23? Right there. It's not just right there. It's this whole thing. And you can see it. Which I had in lab. I had. I can use my pen. So, yeah. What do you call them? Pipe cleaners. That I could stick in there. You know what? I think I have something like that. Or I did. I used to. I'm digging. I don't see it. So anyway, there's your super orbital. Now, all these things, you can see on your PowerPoint, and then you got your list. You can Google other images too. Study however you want. So there we go. What's next? Look at this. That looks good. The ethmoid bone. Ethmoid. This one, I've told you stories about this one. This is the one that they destroyed in my lab because they didn't want to study it. It's kind of hard to see because it's not in any one place because it's tucked in the nasal cavity between the orbits and underneath the frontal bone and et cetera, et cetera. But here it is disarticulated. You see different parts of it. Okay, so like Google like where it's located. So disarticulated, you see some stuff. First thing, number 1, crista galli. You see that this little thing pointing up right here? That's on here. I don't know if you can see that. Sticking crista galli. It literally means the rooster's crest, the rooster's comb. Like on a rooster's got that red thing on top of its head. And I guess to anatomists, that kind of what this looks like, a little thing poking up right there. The rooster's comb or rooster's crown or something. Let's see. This thing, number 3, right there. See that poking? So this right here, all this bony stuff in the middle is the ethmoid bone, but this pointy thing sticking up is the crista galli. Okay. And then the cribriform plate, number 2, what they're pointing at, they just kind of show you, but it's all of this right here. And again, if you go, oops, the wrong way. If you go right here, this thing with all the little holes in it is a cribriform plate. And notice the little holes too. They actually, I think I identify those as well. I don't. But the holes are called cribriform foramina, or they're known as olfactory foramina. That's where the olfactory nerves descend down through the ethmoid bone, and they innervate the nasal mucosa in here. So in a skull, you're like where your nasal mucosa, where your olfactory epithelium is located right here. So the part of your brain situated here and here is called the olfactory bulbs. The olfactory bulbs have nerves descending down through, and they innervate here and here. And so that's when you smell. So it's innervating this. Anyway, we'll talk about that in the lecture. The plate is, is to accommodate the olfactory bulbs. and the nerves. You can see that right there, the flat part. The middle nasal conchae, number 4, that's these processes right here in the middle. Middle nasal conchae right there. And of course, that's where you're going to have some of that olfactory epithelium. And then the perpendicular plate number 5, that's this thing right here that contributes to your nasal septum, you know, the partition that separates your nasal cavity into 2. See that? And then the lateral orbital plate number 6, that's the side right there, right there. This is what's in your eye socket. So in the side right there, you can see it forming your eye socket. So there's your ethmoid bone. A lot going on with that little guy. And there's actually more, but I'm just going to limit to what you can see right here. Okay. The occipital bone. Of course, you know, this is the, you're looking at it like this, right? I think. It's the same orientation, I think. From underneath, see it says from below. And the first thing I have listed, number 28, the hypoglossal canal. You can see you got a number 28 here and a number 28 here. There's a hole that, see this process here and here, which is called the occipital condyle, number 43. See number 43, this thing and this thing. Those are the occipital condyles. That's these things, okay? And underneath that, there's a passage for a cranial nerve called the hypoglossal nerve. And it, you know, it travels in the hypoglossal canal. So it's underneath right there and on both sides, okay? The foramen magnum, that's a big hole right there. Foramen is a hole, magnum means like big, like a big hole. So it's the largest foramen in your skull. It's not the largest one in your body, but it's the largest one in your skull for sure, because there's nothing this big in your skull. And then the external occipital protuberance. Nothing really special about this one, number 39. It's that little knot thing right there, or this little thing hanging down the back of the skull. I just included this because I just like saying external occipital protuberance. It sounds pretty fun and technical, but that's that knot in the back of your head. You can amaze your friends. Feel in the back of your head. You know what that's called? The external occipital protuberance. That's fun. Parlor tricks I'm teaching you. And then the occipital condyles, I already showed you that, these things here. This is where the skull rests on the first cervical vertebra. Okay, so this is articulation site for C1, the atlas. Next is the maxilla, part of your upper jaw. Okay, of course you have 2, and he's just showing you here the left one. Left maxilla, lateral aspect. So so yours actually looks like this. I got to do everything backwards, what you're seeing. So it should look like this, I'm thinking. Like this. Here's the right one. Like this. You see that? What do you need to know? Well, there's all kinds of things going on, but I'm just holding you just to these 3 things. The frontal process number 13, this portion that goes up, that's the part that articulates with the frontal bone, so frontal process, right? And then number 17, the infraorbital foramen. Maybe you have a supraorbital foramen, those holes above the orbits. Now the infraorbital foramen, you know, holes below the orbits. And you can't hardly see, but there's a hole right there, number 17. And this is not, like I said, it's not a real skull, but there's supposed to be like a little hole right there. That's the infraorbital foramen. All mammals have that, the hole, the passage of the maxillary branch of the trigeminal nerve. There you go. And then the zygomatic process. Remember I said that you have 3 zygomatic processes. You have one on the temporal bone, one on the frontal bone, and then one on the maxilla. And here it is right here. This is where the maxilla articulates with the zygomatic bone. Okay. Number 18, this whole surface right here. Zygomatic process. Next is the palatine bone. palate, like roof of your mouth, and this is kind of weird, doesn't look like the roof of the mouth. Well, here it is disarticulated, and so it forms, oh, I don't want to take this guy apart. Maybe I can. Here. The posterior, there's a spring in the middle there, but a posterior hard palate in the back, or it's probably better just for me to do this. Right. See, these are the internal nares. Then there's a surface right there's a bone right here and a bone right there. Okay, these are the palatine bones. Now this is all maxilla up here, but there's one little bone right here, and it's kind of shaped like an L. It looks like this. Palatine bone. This would be the left palatine bone. This is the right palatine bone. Okay, and here it is disarticulated. So, only two things I need for you to know are the horizontal versus the vertical plate. The horizontal plate, of course, that's this kind of part that forms the palate across the top of the roof of the mouth. And this part that articulates the rest with the maxilla is the horizontal plate. So this up is horizontal plate, and then this, I said it backwards. Or is it labeled wrong? No, I said it right. Horizontal plate and then vertical plate. All this from here up is vertical plate. Okay. Next is the zygomatic bone itself. And I just label three things. Remember, there are three processes. The zygomatic bone articulates with the maxilla and the frontal and the temporal bone. Well, its processes are named after those bones. Like the first one, number one, right here, it's where it articulates with the maxilla. So all this surface right here is the maxillary process. Okay. Number two, it's where it attaches to the frontal bone. So this part surface right here, frontal process. And this right here goes back and attaches to the cheekbone on the side, or this is the cheekbone, attaches to the temporal bone. So it'd be like this right here. Okay. That's the temporal process of the zygomatic bone. So there you go. Nasal bones. Nothing really to identify. Just nasal bone. It's one of your nose bones. This says left nasal bone. So it's like the left side of the face, and then you have another one over here. And so you're looking at this one right here. And you can see the smooth surface right here. That's the midline right there. So this is medial, and this is lateral. The lateral surface is where it's kind of jagged. That's where it articulates with the maxilla. Okay. Okay. Inferior nasal concha. I don't point out anything. Just recognize the inferior nasal concha. This is kind of another weird bone. You have two of these, which are considered facial bones, and they're in the nasal cavity. See across from my fingers, there's a little bump sticking out, and then maybe I can show you right here. This thing right here, and those are the inferior nasal conchae. Those are two facial bones. And this is what they look like disarticulated. This is kind of looking at it, well, it tells you lateral aspect from the side. So this is the median. If you're standing in the middle of the nose looking out, this is what you're looking at. And so the over here would be the rest of the skull. And then you'd be standing like at the median septum looking out like that. So there's your nasal concha. Next is the lacrimal bone. Lacrimal, this is the smallest bone of the skull. A little tear bone, tiny little bone in the medial side. Of course, there's things pointed out on it, but if I don't list anything, then you don't have to know it, okay? So if it's just plain bone by itself, you just got to know that, hey, that's the lacrimal bone. Just recognize it. There it is by itself. And then, let's see. right there, number 6. There's where it is. It's about that big, right there. See, there it is. Now, on your list, I know there's somebody out there that probably printed out the list. There's going to be some extra stuff on the list I didn't put on here. If it's on the list and not on here, don't worry about it, because some things are just easier to point out in person. This one is just, there's some things that I pointed out you just can't see very good, so I'm just skipping that. So anyway, just recognize it as the lacrimal bone. Okay. Next is the vomer. This is another thing too. It's kind of difficult to see. This, you see, it's vertical like this. It contributes to your nasal septum. This flat part right here attaches to the sphenoid bone. And so it's kind of up under here, you know, that perpendicular thing. And then let me show you right here, that V-shaped notch right there. That's the vomer. That number 27. That's the vomer right there. And that's it. And it blends with the perpendicular plate of the ethmoid bone right there. And so this is all part of the vomer and the ethmoid together. And so that's your vomer. Contributes to your nasal septum. There it is by itself. Ta-da. And then finally, I think finally, is the mandible, or the dentary bone. This bone, you have one bone in the mammalian skeleton, which is called a dentary bone. It forms your mandible, your jaw. The words mandible and jaw are synonymous, but the words dentary and mandible are not synonymous. Dentary is the name of the bone that forms your mandible. Okay, so I could show you the mandible of other non-mammals, and there's more than just a dentary bone. There's other bones. Okay, but mammals only have one bone called the dentary bone. And so I don't know, if you're not studying like the evolution of the skeleton, they just kind of like throw it out the window. That's the tendency for them to do that in human anatomy. Just don't worry about that. Just name it the mandible. That's fine. Anyway, but I'm a vertebrate zoologist, so I'm always thinking about, you know, evolutionary history and so forth. But this is your jawbone, your mandible. I got one right here. See that? And the ramus, the word ramus means branch. You see where you got teeth? It's like two planes. You got like this, and then the part that comes up. The whole thing that comes up is the ramus. So 15, they're kind of pointing to something on the side, but it's kind of hard to see what it is. But this whole thing is the ramus, right? And the number 17, the part that has teeth between my fingers like that, all of this horizontal part is the body of the mandible. So body and ramus, okay? Now, these next three structures, oh no, the first, this, no, just forget what I just said. This next thing, the cornoid process, number 19, that pointy thing right here. They point it out right here. It's kind of hard to tell what it's pointing to. These pointy things right here and here, cornoid processes. And in the background, here and here, these kind of rounded things right here. See, it's kind of rounded, pointy versus rounded. That's where it forms a joint with the skull. Like that. See how it goes together like that? That's the mandibular condyle. Condyle means knuckle. So you imagine like a knuckle, like a joint. So it forms a joint. Mandibular condyle. The cornoid process is the pointy one in the front. Now, mental foramen. Remember, mental means chin. There's a hole right here and here. Those are the mental foramina right there in your chin. So there you go. And then finally, I think, you look at this bone and this bone, they kind of look the same, don't they? This one and this one. You see that? They're related. Yeah, the hyoid bone. I don't have one of these because it's suspended in the throat right here, but it's like a little miniature mandible. That's your hyoid bone. We talk about this one in lecture. Say, suspend it in your throat. Just doesn't really do too much. It supports your voice box. Has some swallowing muscles attached to it. But it's just kind of a vestige and overleft, you know, in the evolution of the throat and stuff in mammals. And if you look at the same feature in lower vertebrates, like say, you know, like in reptiles, amphibians, and then fish, this thing has more importance. But in mammals, it doesn't really do too much. But anyway, it's in your throat. Not your Adam's apple. It's at the base of your tongue. It's that. You've probably heard of the hyoid. You probably heard it on one of those CSI shows, and they talk about fractured hyoids. The only way you can break this is if you strangle somebody. So if you have a victim with a fractured hyoid, they're more likely strangled. The anatomy of it's pretty simple. It kind of looks like a little jawbone, but it doesn't have teeth on it, right? So it's just smooth. The center part, number one, is just the body between these two pointy things right here. Can't see this one too well, but there's two pointy things. Those are the horns, or cornu means horn. So the small ones are the lesser horns, and then everything that kind of extends back is considered greater horn. So greater horn, lesser horn, greater horn, and body between. And that's it for this week. I wanted to do all the other bones beginning with the vertebrae next week. And so not a bad lab, you know, less than an hour, right? 45 minutes or so, pointing all that out. And that is the plan. And so do you guys have any questions about anything? All 12 of you, dozen? No? So next week, we'll do the rest of the skeleton. We'll finish up this PowerPoint. And then 2 weeks from today, you'll have your practical on everything, which will be the skin, the muscles, and the bones. Okay, y'all good? No questions? Okay, until then, I will see you guys next week. Bye.